Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by mybookie.ag. To find out more about mybookie.ag and to sign up, go to thegruelingtruth.com, click on the mybookie.ag banner at the top of the page, and it will give you up to a $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. I am your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in my other co-host, 1981 national champion, member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing fine. Good morning, Mike. Getting ready for the draft. Going to be exciting a couple days here.
Yeah, and on Thursday night, we will have a live NFL draft show, which you can hear at the start of the draft. We will be live on thegruelingtruth.com. We'll be live on Spreaker, and we will now be live on Zeno Live Radio. And one of the people that will be with us that night is the host of the FF Faceoff. Help me welcome to the show, Anthony Cervino. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
This is like Christmas for NFL fans, correct, Anthony?
It is. Absolutely is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm a Bengals fan, so my presents are usually like coal. Oh, come on. That was funny. Somebody could have made a comment. But today we are going to look at the offensive side of the NFL draft. Tomorrow at noon we will look at the defensive side. And let's start off with quarterbacks. And when you look at the quarterbacks, Anthony, the thing that stands out to me is I don't think there's anybody here that deserves to be picked in the top 15 picks, but we know that will happen. Who are the guys that you think are the best equipped to play in the NFL at the position of quarterback?
You know, I think Kyler Murray and the usual suspects, whether it's Drew Lock or Dwayne Haskins, they're the ones that are highly touted. But I'm hearing now that Daniel Jones could be selected by the Giants with the fourth pick.
Yeah, and I would think as a Cowboys fan, you would be excited about that.
Well, you know, with Daniel Jones, Gil Brandt, the longtime NFL executive and scout, he compared Daniel Jones to Peyton Manning in terms of intelligence, game managing ability, and football IQ. That's all well and good, but how is that going to translate in the NFL? I think the downside for a kid like Daniel Jones is probably like a career like Ryan Fitzpatrick, a journeyman who could start here and there. But I don't know if Daniel Jones is ever going to be an every week starting NFL quarterback.
Well, don't you think a lot of this comparison to Peyton Manning is because he has the same quarterback coach and,
right.
Cutcliffe?
I do.
Yeah, and I mean, this is typical NFL where nobody really knows what the hell they're doing half the damn time. And when I look at him, I mean, he looks the part of an NFL quarterback. And I think that is another big telling tale here, because you get guys like Kyler Murray that aren't your typical quarterback that people are going crazy over. And with Jones, I mean, he has good footwork, command of the offense. My biggest concern is he doesn't have the biggest arm. The ball tends to flutter at times when it comes off his hands. He drifts to the left at times while he's in the pocket while waiting to throw the football. And there are a lot shorter windows to throw in at the NFL level. And I think when you look at his release, I think it needs to be shortened also. And overall, he looks the part, but I don't think that means that much here. The intelligence and toughness are in question, but I think there's too many questions that exist here to draft him in the first round, but we all know somebody will.
You know, it's a quarterback-driven league. And maybe you would be able to answer this better than I can, but 15, 20 years ago, are any of these quarterbacks being drafted in the first?
No, because there are too many questions about all of it. Well, they may be, because let's face it. I mean, there was a lot of chances taken on. There's always been chances taken on the quarterback, Steve, because I think everybody looks at this and they think that we have to have a franchise quarterback to win a Super Bowl, which most of the time is correct. But look at how many franchise quarterbacks are drafted past the first round.
Yeah, obviously the perfect example is Tom Brady. With 6th round pick. But yeah, I don't see a quarterback that's a Andrew Luck or even a Jared Goff and right now. But I like Jones. I like Jones because he's a pocket passer. He's a prototype NFL quarterback. But I agree with the comments you made but I don't really see any quarterbacks that should go at least in the top 15 or 20 in the first round.
Yeah, and the guy that stands
right.
out.
Somebody will.
The guy that stands out to me that's going to be overpicked is I think we're going to see Drew Lock go in the top 15 picks. And when I look at Drew Lock, the reason I say that is he is your prototypical pocket passer. He has a huge arm. He has the ability to throw passes anywhere. But the thing is, if you look at more than his highlight films, Anthony, he's prone to overthrow the ball. He puts too much on it. He's what, people call a gunslinger type quarterback. And I think in the end, somebody is going to overreach for him, and it's going to set them back for years.
Yeah, and I'm hearing a team like the Broncos could be a landing spot for Drew Lock. I also saw the Giants, if they go in another direction early, and if Lock is there at 17, I believe they pick, that could be another possible destination for him.
Yeah, and then we move on to Dwayne Haskins, and the thing that strikes me with Dwayne Haskins is the way nobody really talks about Dwayne Haskins anymore, Anthony.
Yeah, but you don't think he's going to slide, right?
What do you mean by slide? Do you mean get picked where he should, which would be the late first or second round? I mean, because...
But that's sliding, piggybacking off of what we just said 5 minutes ago, that's sliding in today's NFL.
Yeah, and the thing is this. I think it's possible that it's improbable that everybody would come to their senses. But if everybody was to come back and come to their senses, one team will reach for one of these guys at the top 15, then the rest are going to fall to late first, early second round, which is what should happen. We know that probably won't. And when I look at a guy like Dwayne Haskins, I don't think it really scares me when a guy has only had one real season as a starting quarterback at the college level. So yeah, I would stay clear of him because
in there. Yeah, but he's rated. I think he's rated as the best pro prospect in the draft. Isn't he above Kyler Murray?
It's according who you ask.
I mean,
I think most places now have Murray at 1, but
yeah, he's 6'3" and 231, so he's kind of built a lot like I use Andrew Luck because I've watched him play the most, but. Yeah, he's got the physicality to take hits and take a beating, and he's got the athleticism to run the ball. But yet, he completed 70% of his passes and throwing for 50 touchdowns in his career. But he's a traditional drop back passer too, which he's probably the best combination of what we think Kyler Murray's going to bring and what pocket passing quarterback would bring. So. If I was going to go with a pick early, I would take a chance on him. But you're right; he's young, he's inexperienced. But that means somebody maybe like a Giants take him and let him learn for a year or two as Manning winds down his career, and they build him up. And then in a couple of years, he's got experience in the NFL.
Yeah, but Steve, real quick, the problem with that is this: if he gets picked at number 6, he's almost got to play the first year. Because everybody, as soon as something goes wrong with Eli Manning, everybody's going to scream for this kid. And when you look at him, he has a great arm, and sometimes he looks like a bad dude. But there are stretches during which everything just looks a little bit off to me with him. His decision-making's not consistent. I don't think his field vision's very good. And he makes a lot of bad plays in terms of ball security. His footwork needs improvement. His ball placement is inconsistent. And, I think everybody looks too much at how strong his arm is and how big he is. But I think if he gets drafted in the first round, wherever he goes, at some point in this season, he's going to be forced into play quarterback, whether he's ready or not, which is going to only hurt his development.
Good point.
Anthony, any thoughts?
No, you broke up there for a second.
I said, Anthony, any thoughts? So, is there a quarterback that you see in this draft that people aren't talking about, Anthony, that you think could be as good as any of these guys, if not better?
Like a later round gem? Maybe Will Grier?
Well, see, I don't think there's much chance that Will Greer's going to. I just don't think he has the arm strength. The guy that stands out to me is Ryan Finley. And when I wrote the article for the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft, I watched him. I don't know why I watched him because I wasn't really thinking about him at the time. But I was surprised when watching the film because when you break him down, he does a lot of things well that translate to the NFL. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but it's big enough. And I think the most important trait here for any quarterback is accuracy. And I think Finley consistently demonstrates good ball placement to complete passes and to keep the ball away from the defense. He makes good decisions, and he has impressive ball security. When you look at that, and this might sound crazy, but out of all these guys that are coming into this draft, I think he could end up being the best one.
Yeah, right now, I mean, on Will Grier, I know he's not being compared to some of these other first-round talents, but I'm seeing draft experts peg him as a late first, early second-round pick. The New England Patriots have reportedly shown a lot of interest in him, and they could be a possible destination for Grier, and he's touted for his downfield accuracy.
Yeah, I just don't see it with Will Grier. I mean, they can say what they want, but I like Finley better than Grier. It wouldn't surprise me if Grier ends up being one of the top 5 guys here because I'm not impressed with the top 5 guys here. The one guy I am pretty much impressed with, but the thing that scares me is he could go to the Cardinals, is Kyler Murray. And I think with Murray, I think it's safe to say, Anthony, that wherever he goes, the offense will have to be designed to fit his strengths.
Yeah, and, he's only 5'9", 5'10". He's not the biggest guy in the world. I'm not on board with Kyler Murray going to the Cardinals number 1 overall if they indeed select him. I think they can get by with either trading that pick or, get by with Josh Rosen and drafting one of those edge rushers. But Kyler Murray, because his arm is compared especially to Pat Mahomes, that's the big enigma around Kyler Murray.
See, I think the biggest enigma with Kyler Murray is this. You're going to have to be a shotgun spread team. You're not going to go under center. He's very accurate. I think he's a hell of a quarterback. Now, my problem with the Cardinals and going there is I don't think Kingsbury is going to last very long there. I think if it was somebody like Kingsbury that was a good coach, if Bruce Arians was still there, I could see this. But the other problem, and I don't think people really bring it up, is this. If you go with Kyler Murray and you're designing the offense to fit his strengths, you almost have to go out and find a backup quarterback for him just the same way.
I mean, they're out there. I think they're mostly on other teams right now, but there are signal callers that have similar skill sets to Kyler Murray. But are you worried about the intangibles at all? His body language, how he acts in interviews, does that worry you at all?
Yeah, because that is my problem with all of these guys. All of these guys have a significant problem somewhere in their game. And I think this, Drew Lock, same thing. He's a really quiet guy. I don't want a quiet quarterback. With Kyler Murray, when I look at him, he's the best quarterback. He does everything the best, but I still think he's an Oakland A 3 or 4 years from now, especially, if Cliff Kingsbury drafts him. So I think there's huge issues with all these guys, which is why I don't know why any team would mortgage your future. I mean, to me, if I'm the New York Giants, give me the best tackle in the draft, and then give me the best defensive player left at 17, and then try a Ryan Finley or a Will Grier early in the second round. That makes more sense to me, because if you draft a Finley or a Grier in the second round, people are not going to have a problem with him sitting for a year or two behind Eli Manning.
Yeah, and when you take a player with an early first-round pick, the fans especially and the media, we're going to be calling for this player to start right away, and there is no room to sit.
Yeah, but there's nobody here, Steve, to me, like an Andrew Luck. When I saw Andrew Luck and he was coming out, we all knew Andrew Luck is a starting NFL quarterback. He's going to start right away. There was no problem picking him there. He was a great leader. He did everything well. To me, that's a quarterback that gets picked in the top 10.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But I as far as Kyler Murray, my concerns are his size, but he does have show good consistency, and he's probably going to be the first quarterback picked. But I agree with you. I don't know that if there's any quarterback worth taking in the first pick or even really high in the first round. There's too many other positions that need to be protected and filled. Offensive line, edge rush, cornerbacks and safeties. And all these guys, like you said, are probably late first round picks or early second round picks. But I like your scenario with the Giants. Go out and get a good offensive lineman, get an edge rusher, and try and get one of these good quarterbacks early in the second round. So, but that's that glamour position of quarterback that everybody wants to get one. So somebody's going to take a chance on Kyler Murray or one of the other big guys, and. But I don't think there's anybody worthy of it.
Well, just think of it like this. The last 2 Super Bowls we've seen were won by a 6th-round pick and Nick Foles. So it's not that big a deal whether you get one in the first round or not. You just got to get the right one. And as a Bengals fan, I can tell you this. If you look at the Bengals' first-round selections at quarterback, most of them outside of Carson Palmer have not panned out. But you've got a Boomer Esiason, who was the 2nd round, Andy Dalton, who was the 2nd round, Kenny Anderson, who was the 3rd round, Anthony. So I don't understand why teams that are supposed to have football experts running them are doing this. Is this more because of pressure put on them by fans than anything else?
What, that they have to go and draft a quarterback?
Yeah, that they feel like they have to go get a quarterback to satisfy the fans.
Yeah, and a lot of it is to sell tickets, too. I mean, look at the Cardinals. Earlier in the offseason, I took a look at their ticket sales when they're winning games and when they're not, and there is a big difference. And when fans aren't going to your stadium to watch the team, you're losing out on merchandise and concessions. Drafting Kyler Murray, putting in place Cliff Kingsbury, that's going to sell tickets. If there was no Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona right now, would the Cardinals have been media darlings in the first 2 months of the NFL offseason? I doubt it.
No, and they wouldn't be considering Kyler Murray because Kyler Murray is the perfect fit for what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do. I just think this, and as I said in the past, I think that cell phone thing is going to kill Kingsbury in the end because at some point during one of those practices, the Oakland A's are going to send a message to Kyler Murray, and he's going to go ahead and just say, screw this, I'm going to Oakland.
They say his football IQ is in question. The fact that, I heard Baker Mayfield comps, but Baker Mayfield was a grinder, and I'm seeing reports that Kyler Murray isn't.
There's not too many guys that are.
But don't you want your quarterback to be a leader, showing up to Friday walkthroughs and meetings late? That's not what I want out of my quarterback, never mind a first number 1 overall pick.
Oh, I agree. That's why I don't think any of these guys are, because there's nobody here. To me, Kyler Murray has all the physical tools, even though he's not that tall. But my problem is everything you just said. And every one of these guys, when you go through them, they're either guys that work hard, great leaders, but they have some kind of mechanical flaw, or they're guys that are the opposite. There's nobody here that puts this complete package together to me. And that's why I don't think any of them are really top 15 picks in any draft.
If I'm the Cardinals, they don't have to trade Josh Rosen. Even if they take Kyler Murray, they don't have to trade Rosen. They'd both be under rookie deals. And, Josh Rosen would serve as insurance in case Kyler Murray doesn't work out or in case Kyler Murray wants to go play baseball.
Well, I agree with you there, Ed, and I just don't think Josh Rosen's that good. And if they can get something for him, they ought to now. I just don't know what they can get for him and if anybody's desperate enough to give up a first or a second-round pick for him. So I think at the end, the quarterback thing.
Why would you?
The question I have is, is there a quarterback here better than Josh Rosen in this draft this year?
Yeah. I think that there's probably 7 or 8. I'm not a Josh Rosen fan, and if you want to talk about somebody that's not a grinder, that's Josh Rosen. I mean, Josh Rosen's a guy at UCLA that didn't lead his team. He didn't win. At least with Kyler Murray, he won where he was at. And how many successful NFL quarterbacks have there been, Anthony, that weren't winners at the college level?
Probably not a lot.
Yeah, the only one that sticks in my head is Jay Cutler, and we all know how that turned out. You know, so we want a guy that wins.
Well, Jay Cutler, you bring up Jay Cutler, that's bad body language, doesn't give a damn about, anybody but himself and his contract. So
yeah, and he lost in college. But see, I think it's not a good example comparing Jay Cutler and the way he is to Kyler Murray, because I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And Kyler Murray hasn't shown to be anywhere near that yet. He may, but I don't think he has yet. And when I watched Kyler Murray against Alabama, when they got way behind, he did mount a comeback that got him back in that game, and they scored in every possession in the second half with a ton of pressure on him. So I will give him that. So I will give it a wait and see there with that, but I don't think he's worth the number 1 pick in the draft.
Before we move on off of Josh Rosen, do you think the fact that he's been put into this situation with the Cardinals, is he going to have a chip on his shoulder moving forward? Maybe he works a little bit harder. Maybe he wants to prove everybody wrong, especially if he's traded to another team.
I would think, yeah, but shouldn't he have already had that chip on his shoulder for going after so many quarterbacks last year? And my problem with Rosen is he's a guy that grew up with everything handed to him. And I don't even know if he's ever been a captain on any of his teams. And the guy that stood out to me was Connor Cook. You remember the guy that had to play in the playoff game for the Raiders? It's a guy who was a quarterback at Michigan State for 4 years and never got elected team captain. So if I'm the Cardinals, I would actually probably trade the number 1 pick and try to get a couple picks for it, or a lot of picks for it, because even if Kyler Murray is the answer at quarterback, he's not the answer to turn that team around yet, because that team needs a lot more than a quarterback. You agree or not agree?
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a wasted pick for them. They've got line issues to fill. Again, the edge rushers are going to be the darlings of this draft, I think. But yeah, I agree. I would try to take my number 1 pick, trade it down, and see how many picks I could get them, say, in the first round, and fill the other positions, and then just see who's available in the second round and take that guy.
And go ahead, and since you already invested all that money in Rosen last year, give him a full season and see what he looks like. If it doesn't work out, you're going to draft high again next year, and next year you actually have quarterbacks that are worth taking in the first round.
Is there a quarterback that can be taken on day 2 or day 3 by the Cowboys to maybe give them a little bit of leverage in a Dak Prescott conversation? Because they need a backup anyway.
Ryan Finley. I like Ryan Finley. I'm not a big fan of Greer, but he's worth a shot, but I don't know if I'd use a second-round pick. But I think Finley is a guy that, unlike Dak, he is kind of the opposite of Dak Prescott, where Dak is a big, strong, physical athlete with a huge arm. Finley is a guy, though, that can throw you open because he has good anticipation. He reads the defense well. I think Ryan Finley is the guy I would look at there. And he's a guy that's probably going to be available in the second round.
Yeah, when Dallas doesn't have a first-round pick, they use that to get Amari Cooper. They have a second. I don't know if they need to go quarterback that early, but I'm talking about maybe getting a quarterback in the 4th round, just like Dak.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think, just like there's not too many 6th-round quarterbacks like Tom Brady, there's not too many 4th-round quarterbacks like Dak.
No.
When you look at it, they got lucky there because he was a guy that was undervalued. I think a lot of that's just where he played in basically playing at Mississippi State, I think leaves a little bit of doubt too. When you look at these guys, I don't know if there's anybody that stands out to me that's low. That's that low that could possibly. Because also, if Dak goes down, you don't really want a rookie fifth-round pick coming in. They got lucky with Dak. It'd be hard to see lightning strike twice there, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, no, I do. Dak, even Dak Romos, who were undrafted, Brady in the 7th round, they don't grow on trees, but you figure in a contract negotiation, Jerry can always say, hey,
how
we
about
got
this?
you in the 4th.
There is a guy that I think is the best quarterback in this draft. All right? The best quarterback in this draft is Clayton Thorson. But the problem with Clayton Thorson is, I think he had a torn ACL after his junior year. They had to fix that. Last year, he did not look nearly as good. Was still good last year. I think he threw for over 3,000 yards, 61% completion. He's 6'4", 222. He runs like a 4.7 40. And I think that the junior version of him would be the best quarterback in this draft. He started 53 straight games, the most in Big Ten history. But we had the injury that, he had a torn ACL in Northwestern's bowl game. And, to show you how good an athlete it was, I think it was on a catch on a throwback pass from a halfback where he got his knee torn up. And he returned for his senior year. And the thing about him was he was a little bit slower. He wasn't quite as good as what he was the year before. I think Clayton Thorson's a guy that could be there. And I think Clayton Thorson's a guy that when this is all said and done, if he gets his mobility back and gets everything back to where he was before the ACL, which nowadays is not an impossibility, Clayton Thorson could be the steal of this draft for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the last quarterbacks on everybody's rankings, too.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is this. He's one of the last guys on the rankings because he was hurt most of the year and didn't look that good. But if you go, when you're done here, go pull up Clayton Thorson's film as a junior at Northwestern before the injury, and then compare it to his film as a senior at Northwestern. And what you'll see is a guy that is probably better than anybody in this draft as a quarterback. The only question is with the injury, can he get back to where he was 2 years ago? And I would think with modern medicine, I don't see a reason why he couldn't. So if you could get Clayton Thorson in the 4th or 5th round, you could have somebody better than Dak Prescott.
Yeah, he's drawn comps to Deshaun Kaiser.
Who?
Thorson.
Yeah, because he sucked last year. I mean, we didn't suck, but he wasn't what he was before. But you also got to remember this.
He didn't exactly have the best talent around him either.
No, he didn't. And they lost the Larkin kid after, I think they beat Purdue to open the season. And then, like the next game, their best running back from LaSalle High School in Cincinnati, who was Stephen Larkin, got hurt, which took him down there also. So remember this also. When you read all this stuff, Deshaun Kaiser was a guy that the Cleveland Browns still drafted in, the 1st or 2nd round?
I think it was a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, so when you look at all of this, these people are stupid most of the time. I mean, I've been to NFL, where they do at the University of Cincinnati, where they do the little combine for all the guys that are possible NFL players. And I know I've told this story a lot, but I went in there, and it was the year I coached the River Monsters, and I was looking for a quarterback because Lorenzen got hurt. And most of these scouts were like 5'5" and weighed 300 pounds. None of them looked like they'd ever played a day of football. And when the players are working out, they're sitting there looking at their watches the entire time, just timing stuff, instead of actually looking at the player. And I don't care what a 40 time is. None of this stuff matters to me. But when you look at it and the fact that, these guys are more ingrained in the numbers than they were the player, I think that's how you get so many big misses, if that makes any sense, Anthony.
No, it does. It definitely does.
But, all right, let's go to...
Wait, Mike. What about... Are you familiar with Tyree Jackson?
Tyree Jackson. Is that the kid? Where's he from?
Buffalo.
Oh yeah, the big enormous kid. Yeah, he's just a
6'7",
big kid.
249.
Yeah, all I know is this. Name me a quarterback over 6'5" or 6'6", not named Joe Flacco, that really turned out to be that good. Because when you watch him, he's really stiff. He's got a huge arm. I don't see much there. How about you, Anthony?
I think the upside's there, but I'm not too high on him.
I think he's a guy you could take a shot on in the 4th or 5th round, and maybe he develops into something. But I think with Clayton Thorson, I think he's already something. It's just whether physically he can get back to where he was 2 years ago, or a little over a year ago. All right, let's go to running back real quick, which I don't think should take too long. I don't think there's a whole bunch of running backs here that look like they're great. Anthony, am I missing something? I got like 5 or 6 guys that I think are quality, possible NFL running backs.
I think it's headlined by the Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders. Outside of them, then there's a little bit of a drop off.
Well, I'll give you a name.
When you get into Bryce Loves and all that.
What do you think about Mike Weber from Ohio State? 5'9", 211. I think this guy could be one of the steals of this draft, that somebody may get him in the 3rd or 4th round. He ran a fast 40 in the combine, which I don't really care about, but he ran great in the bag drills. And the thing that stands out to me is he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He looks like an everyday runner in the NFL. Have you looked at Mike Weber at all?
A little bit. I see him as a top 5 prospect, as a top 5 prospect on some boards. He has pretty good speed that they say is pretty deceptive. But can he break off those chunk runs? I think that's one of the knocks. That does he have enough to break them off?
All right. Let's see. What's your take on Miles Sanders?
I think Miles Sanders could be the best running back in this draft when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think him or Weber both could be. And the thing I like about both of them is they both have quick feet. I think Sanders has got quicker feet. He's got great ability to cut. He averaged like 6 yards a carry almost at Penn State. So when I look at it, I like him too. What do you think about the 2 Alabama guys? And with the 2 Alabama guys, since they split time so much, do you think with Jacobs or Harris that there is any question on possibly if they can carry the ball 20 or 25 times a game just because they really didn't have to consistently do that at Bama?
I don't know if I'm going to hold that against them. We see a lot of college backfields produce 2 or 3 running backs who are all teammates. We've seen it before. So, no, I'm not really going to hold that against him. I think Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris will be able to get it done.
Which one do you like better?
Yeah.
Probably Josh Jacobs.
All right, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in this modern NFL, I mean, you see running backs shuffling in and out almost every 2nd or 3rd play. So I don't think that the combination of those 2 playing would be much of a factor in NFL. And they're both Alabama trained, which means they're going to be gritty and tough. So those could be 2 good sleeper running backs.
I'll give you another sleeper. What do you think about Justice Hill? Anybody? Anybody heard of Justice Hill? Anthony?
Out of Oklahoma?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a 5'10", 190-pound back. He's drawn comps to Philip Lindsay, who came out of nowhere and took the job from Royce Freeman. He can catch the ball well, 88th percentile Spark athletic score. So I think the talent and upside's there.
Well, the thing I see with him is I think this guy could be the surprise out of all these running backs because I think he has the best first step quickness. I think his burst to the second level of defense is better than anybody I've seen here. And on top of his feet, he has great cutting ability. And the thing I really like about him is he plays with great knee bend. He runs behind these pads, and he's got a forward lean, which means even as a small guy, you don't see him going backwards very often. And the thing I always look for first with a running back is how many times, if I watch them carry the ball 20 times, how many times do they fall forward as opposed to going backwards or being stood straight up? And with this guy, there's very few times you don't see him falling forward.
You know, do you really need a back that can handle 20 carries in the NFL anymore? Aside from your Ezekiel Elliott's, and there's a couple of backs that can handle the workload, but in today's NFL, I mean, look at Steve's Colts. There are 3 capable running backs who all get
But how about this, Anthony? Would they be better with 3 capable running backs, or would they be better off with one stud, like, back in the day? Who was the guy you guys had, Steve? I'm losing his name. Edgerrin James.
Edgerrin James?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. The best running teams are not the ones that do it by committee normally. I mean, the Rams had other good running backs, but when it was Todd Gurley 25 times a game, they were almost untouchable.
But even with Edgerrin James, he still ceded some touches to Dominic Rhodes.
Yeah, but he also still carried the ball 20 to 25 times a game.
I think a Justice Hill, he could be a good, like, Nyheim Hines comp, where he comes in situational passing down back.
You know who he reminds me of a lot as a Bengal fan is the way he plays as Gio Bernard.
Gio Bernard? I love Gio Bernard.
I love Gio Bernard too. And the thing about Gio Bernard is he is actually capable of running between the tackles. And actually when they had him and Jeremy Hill, usually Gio was the one that got to carry between the tackles because he was tougher running the ball like that than Hill was. So I think running back-wise, there's a bunch of guys here that could be something. Josh Jacobs does still stick out to me as the most NFL ready, though.
I think he might be the only back that goes in the first round, and it's not going to be until maybe the last 10 picks.
Yeah, I agree. But also I think you've seen, I mean, there's been a fair amount of years here over the last 5-6 years where there hasn't been a running back picked until early in the second round, too.
No, and that was supposed to be the case last year, and we saw those two, who went? Rashad Penny and Sony Michel both went, I believe, in the first round.
So I think running backs, like wide receivers, are kind of a dime a dozen anymore, if you know what I mean.
Any take on David Montgomery out of Iowa State?
Go ahead, Anthony.
David Montgomery, he's the second back on my board to obviously Josh Jacobs. David Montgomery can reportedly handle a full 3-down workload.
And I think the scouting reports say he's a reliable receiver, too. And that's the question about the other guys. A lot of these running backs are used as short receivers now, or the screen passes or the short outs. Are the rest of them good pass receivers?
There's not too many guys. I don't think you see too many guys anymore. They're going to be drafted in the first or second round that can't catch the ball out of the backfield, Anthony.
No, because that's what the colleges are doing and the NFL's doing now. So you have to be able to catch the ball 9 times out of 10 in the NFL now.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of being successful. Let's go to wide receivers. We talked about the dime a dozen, wide receivers, running backs. Who do you like here wide receiver-wise, Anthony?
I think the name that sticks out is either Hakeem Butler or Harry. I am cautiously optimistic about DK Metcalf. I get all the hype, and I get what he's done at the Combine.
Yeah, but what he did at the Combine was horrible. Did you like what he did at the Combine?
I didn't like his agility scores and his
that is the only thing that matters here because
that's alarming.
Yeah, when you watch the film, he doesn't run great routes. He rounds everything off.
He wasn't even the best receiver on his team.
No, A.J. Brown was. Yeah, and when you look at DK Metcalf, the thing that struck me was the 3-cone drill. He ran a 7.38 in the 3-cone drill. Usually, I don't care what happens at the Combine. But the thing that stands out to me is, in comparison, Tom Brady ran a 7.2 3-cone drill. So that means Metcalf has blazing straight line speed, but his ability to quickly change direction has to be more than questioned. He changes direction slower than Tom Brady.
there was a recent report, I think it was from yesterday, of the Raiders coming out and saying we are going to make a surprise pick, and I immediately thought of DK Metcalf. I immediately thought of DK Metcalf.
Yeah, because the Raiders are the team that always picks the straight line speed because they still think they're playing football in the 1970s.
Darius Hayward-Bay.
Yeah, that's who everybody thinks of. And, I mean, they've done it in the past. They did it with Obi Malafanoa or whatever the hell his name was. That was the safety who looked like who could really run. What's your take on Marquise Brown?
Marquise Brown, I think, because of the Liz Frank injury and his injury history, he's a player with a ton of top-end speed. He's going to fall in the draft, and whoever gets him is going to get a value. I think he could potentially land to New England because they are that team that'll take a chance.
I think that he would be perfect in the Indianapolis Colts offense.
I could see it.
I mean, you get him out in space.
I can see it, yeah.
Andrew Luck throws the ball to him quickly. He's all over the place. You got T.Y. Hilton running down the field with Devin Funchess for some reason. But I just think that it would work out well for them. I think he would fit in good with his ability to go catch the ball quickly. And I think the guy that people are missing the boat on here, though, and you brought him up earlier, is Hakeem Butler from Iowa State. And the thing about him to me is not only that he's a great downfield and end zone threat, and there's not too many end zone threats at wide receiver in this draft, and I think he's the best one. But he is also really good at the intermediate routes. He makes good cuts. And when you consider his size and his high center of gravity, enormous hands, he's a freak athlete, I think this may be the best receiver in the draft. Am I nuts here? Because when I look at him, the other thing that stands out to me, which a lot of these smaller guys don't get, he's really good at getting separation.
No, he is, and he's big. He's 6'5", 227. He's only 22 years old, coming out of a strong Iowa program for talent this year. Why aren't a lot of NFL guys high on him?
My guess is, what did he run the 40 in?
I got to look that up.
Steve, you don't have to be looking it up already, do you?
I'm not.
But my guess is when they see him at 6'5", he doesn't look real fast. But the thing about him is he runs really good routes. And the knock on Jerry Rice was he didn't run a 4.3 or a 4.4. He ran like a 4.48, and he dropped to like 17 or 18. But the thing was he runs great routes. And the other thing about Butler is with his body control, I mean, he has the ability to make the catch on the sideline, drag his toes, and I just don't see any way he is not being undervalued here. He should be the first wide receiver picked in this draft.
You know, I like Hakeem Butler. I think he would be a great fit with the Baltimore Ravens, with a guy like Lamar Jackson, who has trouble throwing the ball. You need that big target who can go and get it.
Well, see, I think that if you're the Baltimore Ravens, though, you're going to go pick up Jacobs as the running back because if you're just going to run the ball, you might as well have a quality number one running back.
I mean, they signed Mark Ingram. I mean, he can get the job done.
Yeah,
for the time
but
being.
I figured since Lamar Jackson's the quarterback, they're going to run the triple option. So you're going to need a fullback and another wing, too. I'm not a big fan of Lamar Jackson. Another guy that stands out to me who is up there with Butler is Deebo Samuel. What do you think of Deebo Samuel? Because he's another guy that I think is being undervalued.
Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina. I'm seeing him projected as a day 2 or even an early day 3 pick.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll go in the first. I think a lot of receivers, right or wrong, will go in the first, but he's going to be one of those value receivers possibly on day 2, and he could be a steal.
Yeah, I think it's a steal. Because I think he gets undervalued because of the 4.5 40, but he runs great routes. He catches the ball well. He produces. And outside of height, I think he's the complete package. But we've seen plenty of 5'11" wide receivers that can get it done.
he scored touchdowns, 16 touchdowns as a receiver, 7 as a rusher, and 4 as a kick returner in 30 games in college. He is he almost like a Percy Harvin type of threat?
Yeah, and those guys are almost, for some reason, I mean, if he was 6'1", I think they would talk about him as a first-round pick. And then the other guy that stands out to me who's a great route runner, which is the thing I always look at first because that way you don't have to teach that when they get there. What do you think of Risley?
Ridley, Georgia. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have a take on him.
All right, get a take on him because when you watch the film, he has a great burst on the first step. He's great at getting separation, and he has great hands. And see, I think what people do here is they fall in love with guys that run 4.3 and 4.4 40s and do all this spectacular stuff. And really, I think with wide receivers, the thing that makes Julio Jones so good, other than being an athletic freak, is he runs great routes. And I think that's the most important thing. You will not find a great wide receiver that doesn't run great routes. So I think any time you have an athletic freak compared to somebody who runs great routes, I think you should always err on the side that runs great routes. It's just my opinion.
What do you think of Paris Campbell? I know Paris Campbell. He just started playing football in college. They don't view him as pro-ready, but 6 foot 205. He's another one of those gadgety receivers. With a little bit of work, I think he can translate in the NFL.
Oh, I think he could end up being the best receiver in this draft. I mean, explosive playmaker, and then once again, great burst, gets good separation. And to me, you see a lot of guys who get drafted high, but they don't get good separation. And you can look like you're getting good separation in college, but if you really break it down, you can tell whether a guy can do that in the NFL or not. Because what I'm saying here is this. In college football, you're usually, even if you're Paris Campbell to Ohio State, you're not usually going up against a guy that's going to be an NFL-level player. So just your speed alone will get you separation. What I talk about separation with a college wide receiver and whether he can do it in the NFL is when you watch him get the separation, is it separation from his athletic ability or is it separation because of a subtle feint or move he might make or the way he uses his hands against the defender? And with Campbell, he uses his hands and, he can make that feint. A lot of these guys, like DK Metcalf, to me, all of his separation in college was because he was a better athlete than the guy in front of him. You hardly ever saw him make any kind of subtle move or any kind of hand fighting where he got any separation. So that's why when we talk about a guy like A.J. Brown, who's 6'1", 225, I think he's flat out better than DK Metcalf. And the thing about A.J. Brown and the thing that I think may make him the most NFL ready about this guy was when you talk to any of the coaches at Ole Miss or any of the players, he was a great team leader, plays with great confidence. He's extremely quick, but he doesn't have, he's not a burner with rare speed, but he has the ability to make those subtle moves. I mean, he is, I think, maybe the best receiver in this draft because I think he is the most polished who also has that physicality.
I like his versatility, the fact that he can play in the slot and on the outside. You need that in today's NFL.
Yeah, and the thing about that is this. That's what I'm talking about, polish and physicality, because you're not going to play in the slot without being physical. You can play outside and maybe get away with it, especially in college. But I think the dude is as dangerous as anybody with the ball in his hands. And he's got a great frame. And I know the question remains if he's fast enough to be a good NFL receiver. But when you look at him, the way he runs routes, as physical as he is, he's a guy that I think is going to be great going to get those 50-50 balls, which you get a lot in the NFL. So if I had to pick a wide receiver and I needed one right now and he had to play this year, A.J. Brown, Hakeem Butler, I think those are the guys I would err towards.
What do you guys think of N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State?
N'Keal Harry, I think, is a guy, Anthony, that was considered the athletic freak before DK Metcalf at the Combine.
And once DK Metcalf did what he did at the Combine, Harry seems to be a player that could be slipping a little bit into the mid-second round, but I think there's plenty of value there.
I don't think there's much value with him because
not high. You don't think Harry?
Watch him. I mean, once again, remember he's going against college DBs. When you watch his film, no, he's not explosive off the line. And when he played somebody who was the size of him or close to it, he really had a lot of trouble separating from him. And if you can't get separation in college, I really doubt you could get separation in the NFL.
I think Harry would be a great fit in the second round to the Cardinals. A player like him could learn behind Larry Fitzgerald.
I don't know. I don't know. Teaching explosion, you can make somebody a little bit quicker by doing a few things with the stance. I don't think his knee bend is real good. I don't know. I know a lot of people like him. I know I caught a lot of hell when I ranked him like 7th out of all the receivers. But I really, it scares me away when you have trouble separating. And I don't, he's a freak natural athlete. Maybe he can get by on that. Maybe he can learn some of this stuff. But the one thing I like about him over Metcalf is people absolutely rave about his work ethic and leadership. So I think in the second round, he might be worth a pick. I don't think he's a first-round receiver because I don't think he's NFL ready right yet. But I think with his work ethic, I think he'll turn out to be a good receiver. I just wouldn't put him up with the A.J. Browns and guys like that right now.
There's a third receiver that's going to, or likely is going to be taken out of Mississippi, DeMarcus Lodge. Any thoughts on him?
He's better than DK Metcalf. I mean, Metcalf, to me, when you watched him play, was the third best receiver on that team. I mean, what's your take on Lodge?
6'2", 202, draft analyst Tony Pauline said that he was the best Mississippi or Ole Miss receiver at their pro day. I'm not going to go that far because of how much I like A.J. Brown. But because DK Metcalf is so boom or bust, it wouldn't surprise me if Lodge ends up being the second best receiver when it's all said and done.
Well, and
out of Mississippi.
Yeah, they didn't say that he was the best Mississippi receiver. They said he was the best in the combine or the best in their pro day. The pro day is basically him lining up in shorts, running down and catching a football. So I don't put too much into account.
But that's all we know out of a lot of this, though. That's what we base a lot of this on.
I don't base any of it on that. I actually watched the game film with it play because you could be tricked by combine film. Just ask Al Davis because he was over the last 20 years of his life. And when you watched it in the games, though, Lodge was the second best receiver. I mean, once again, I think you still have separation problems. And to me, anytime somebody has separation issues, it usually doesn't translate well to the NFL. And John Ross, perfect example with the Bengals. I love John Ross because of how quick he was. But he has a problem getting separation. And when you can't get separation, especially if you're going up against a good DB, you have problems. Let's move on to what I think may be one of my favorite. This may be my Quentin Nelson of this year's draft, and that is tight end T.J. Hawkinson. What do you think of Hawkinson, Anthony?
I think Hawkinson is going to probably be the best tight end out of this draft. He can do it all. I think he is similar to Hayden Hurst, who came out last year and was drafted to Baltimore. Didn't do much in his first year in the league, but Hawkinson can be a difference maker for a team like the Broncos. I think they draft at 10th or 11th. He can stretch the field. He would be a great pairing with Joe Flacco, who's had success with tight ends in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to Hawkinson to me is the way he can block. I mean, he's a complete three-down tight end. I think that he is one of the top 10 players in this draft, Anthony.
I agree, and is there any chance, and I know that they don't do it a lot, that New England trades up to get Hawkinson?
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, Steve, we've seen the impact that a big tight end that can block, who can catch the ball going down the field makes. And I don't understand why people, the highest I've ever seen Hawkinson mocked anywhere was like 9 or 10. And I think that a guy like Hawkinson, number one, how about this? Anthony, Steve, either one of you, why wouldn't the Giants take him at 6? He improves your offensive line. You give him a weapon to go with Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard on the outside. Why would you not do that instead of overreaching for a quarterback?
And do what with Evan Ingram, who can't block?
Dude, he can't block. So
Right.
what you do is you can run 2 tight end sets where you've got 2 guys that can actually stretch the field. And then what happens then is you can't double team a Sterling Shepard or a Golden Tate. You can't double team Saquon Barkley coming out of the backfield. You almost, by running a 2 tight end set there, and the thing is this, with Evan Ingram, you could split him out in the slot. And all of a sudden, you've made it almost so you have to play man or you have to play cover 4 against him.
He averaged 7.3 yards after the catch. That's insane for a tight end. Forced 8 missed tackles last year.
Yeah, and
wherever Hawkinson lands, I think he's going to be an immediate starter, and he could be an immediate star in the league.
Oh, I think he will be, and that's why I think any team that passes on him is nuts. I mean, I think, really, I said that he should be drafted top 10. I think he's probably at least one of the top 10 players. And really, if I'm a team like that, or if I'm the Jets, why not give Sam Darnold this kid at tight end?
I think they like Chris Herndon a lot. Their incoming second-year tight end.
Once again, what is wrong?
But the Jets have needs. They have other needs.
I know they have other needs, but when you look at this, what's wrong with having 2 stud tight ends? Because the Patriots are a team that loves to have 2. That's why they had Martellus Bennett a couple years ago.
I mean, the Patriots drafted Gronk and Aaron Hernandez a couple rounds later in 2010. And to your point, the Eagles have Ertz, and they drafted Dallas Goedert in the 2nd round.
Yeah, so I think
Goedert's productive.
I think tight end, Steve, is the most undervalued position here, and one of the reasons it is because of this. If I have a young quarterback's best friend are tight ends that can give them a security blanket.
Right. Yeah, and they run those cross the middle routes. They're big and strong, and they almost become like a running back with a dump pass. And a guy like Hawkinson, you say gets 70 yards after the carry. That's an easy pass to make because the linebackers are going to drop. Just dump him out, dump him over the middle, or dump him out on the end. You throw the ball to him, and then he turns upfield, and you're looking at 7-yard average after the catch. I think the tight end is a very the Colts use a lot of tight end plays. They use tight ends a lot, and so do the Patriots. So I like Hawkinson a lot. I agree with you, Mike. He should be a top 10 pick easily.
Yeah, and when you look at the Colts, I mean, Peyton Manning had Dallas Clark. Tony Romo had Jason Witten. I mean, it's a huge position of importance that I think gets overlooked. And as a Bengals fan, the question is always this. If Tyler Eifert wasn't hurt every year, I mean, Tyler Eifert being in that lineup's probably 2 or 3 more wins, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree. I think we had I did a mock draft yesterday on the FF Faceoff, and we had Cincinnati taking Hawkinson.
Oh, I would love that, but Cincinnati won't do it because they're going to draft Dwayne Haskins or some stupid crap because they're idiots.
I'm a believer in Andy Dalton, just like you.
Yeah, and when you look at this, most people have the second best receiver as the guy that was opposite of Hawkinson, which is Noah Fant. And with Fant, I think the big problem is I don't think he's a 3-down starter. I don't think he blocks as well yet. But when you look at Noah Fant, Irv Smith, I think both of those guys are guys that are at least into the first-round talent, which means one of them could be a Patriot.
Yeah, they say about Noah Fant that he's an underrated blocker. He needs to bulk up a little bit. I believe he's only 249 pounds. He's only 21, so there's room to develop. What helps him is his technique in blocking. That helps with the strength. He's going to be more of a project in the NFL, if anything, trying to convert him into an NFL blocker. But I would love to see him in New England with his athleticism and his ability to catch the ball. He's not too far behind Hawkinson, but Hawkinson is the all-around tight end everybody wants.
Well, Irv Smith is a guy I like, too. And that's a guy that could get down the seam for you as a tight end. What's your take on Smith?
I think we're going to see 3 tight ends taken in the first round, and Irv Smith's going to be the third. Hawkinson and Fant are going to be the first 2. I had Irv Smith going to New England at 32 if they stayed there in one of my mocks.
All right. Now, are there any tight ends here after those 3 that stick out to you that could be a player right away? Or is it basically just those 3?
I mean, they are the 3 likeliest to be taken in the first round. I don't know if there's a fourth tight end worthy to be taken there. No,
I don't think there is. But I'm just saying, is there anybody even remotely in the area of those 3 left in the draft after that?
What do you think?
No. Let's see. I was just looking for something to argue about.
What do you think about Dawson Knox out of Ole Miss?
Dawson Knox. He's better than DK Metcalf.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's those 3, and then that's about it. There's nobody else that has really impressed me. I mean, Dawson Knox is a guy that I don't even know if I would put him in my top 10. I mean, because to me, Knox, what is he, like 6'4", 250?
Yeah, 6'4", 257.
We're 254.
Yeah, I think with Knox, he's a guy that may have been drafted in the first 2 rounds if he would have come back. He should be coming back next year to Ole Miss. I don't think he's anywhere near ready for this. He's flashed a little bit of receiving ability at times, but he should be going back to Ole Miss for his senior season right now, I think. Why? Do you like him?
I like him. They say he's a projected second-round pick, day 2 pick. He has some upside with stretching the field. I wouldn't mind him landing in Dallas in the second round.
I would love that because I think you would really regret that. I think this kid is a 4th to 6th round pick at best. And you already got Jason Witten.
I think the Cowboys are definitely going to be in a market for a tight end with that second round pick.
Well, they may
Where else do you see them going?
I don't think there's another tight end worth that, though. I mean, you can't just pick somebody. I mean, you want to get value for whatever you pick. So if you've got a guy that is 4th round, I mean, because I've seen it a ton of times with the Bengals, they'll overvalue a guy. They'll pick him 3 spots higher, 3 rounds higher than anybody else did, and then everybody else ends up being right. So really, if I was going to pick a 2nd round tight end, I would say maybe Jay Sternberger from Texas A&M, but he, a lot like the kid from Ole Miss, is a guy I think should have stayed another year. And I mean, Sternberger's just a catcher basically. He can't block at all.
I feel like we're seeing that more and more, where these tight ends, they're not blocking in college, and it's hard to translate in the NFL.
Well, and I think it's because even in the NFL, teams are willing to take a guy that can just catch the ball and just put him in for that and not worry about it, if you know what I'm saying. So,
but doesn't that limit their time on the field?
Yeah.
Because then you need to bring in a second tight end to block. Even a third tight end at times.
How about this? Yeah, but most teams will use 3. So if they're using 3, they'll keep one like him. How about this? I'll give you one from a small college. Have you seen Donald Parham from Stetson?
I haven't watched a lot of tape on him.
Because this is a kid who's like 6'8", 240.
He wasn't even at the combine, I don't think.
No, he wasn't invited to the combine. But I'm just telling you, somebody's going to draft him. He could turn out to be something. He's a kid that needs some work. But all right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We'll talk offensive tackles and interior offensive line. Offensive tackle is a position where I think there are a couple really good ones, Anthony. But I think it's safe to say that This is a weak offensive tackle draft.
Who is your top tackle coming out? Is it Dillard? Is it
Ford? And he could end up being a guard, but he has some flexibility where he can play about anywhere. And I think that teams could get away with him at left tackle even. And I think versatility-wise, he has that in spades. And he is as good a pass blocker as he is a run blocker. But the thing I really like about him is he's 6'3", 329. He gets great leverage on his blocks, and he's really light on his feet. But I think tackle-wise, I think Ford, Taylor, and Dillard are my top three. And then Jonah Williams, I think, is a steady, reliable guy. And I think he has the kind of versatility on the offensive line that makes him invaluable to NFL teams. But I think after Jonah Williams, Dillard, Ford, after those four guys, I think there is a significant drop-off.
Is there anything close to Quentin Nelson in this draft? Because I was high on Quentin Nelson last year, I think, and I still think he was the best prospect to come out, even better than Saquon Barkley when it's all said and done.
Quentin Nelson is the greatest offensive lineman to enter the draft since Anthony Munoz. Steve's got me on this. I said that last year. He was the best player in the draft, and if you look at it, Steve, the thing that's impressive was they put him at guard, and it made their center better, to tackle next to him better. He brought a meanness to that entire team that translated in from being, last place to being first place or second place. They made the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Manning, Luck went from being sacked, 64, 65 times the year before to, I think did he lead the league in quarterbacks not sacked this year? I
know he was under 20, I think, which is a pretty good number to be under. So, yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for adding a mean offensive lineman to your team.
Yeah. So which of these guys, Taylor, Dillard, Williams, or Ford, is the meanest?
None of them really strike me as playing really mean. Most offensive linemen don't. That's why a guy like Quentin Nelson stood out so much to me.
Yeah.
Because the thing I remember about doing last year is when I was rating the offensive lineman, I'm watching it, and the first word that struck me with Quentin Nelson was mean. And I don't think when I rated the four that I just talked about, I don't think I put mean on any of it. Mean streak to me, Anthony, is maybe the most important thing. But I do think that, a guy like Jawan Taylor is raw, but I think he'll be an excellent offensive lineman for a long time. I think the difference for me between Ford, Taylor, and Dillard is I think Ford is more NFL ready to play right away.
What do you think of Jonah Williams?
Jonah Williams, he's steady, he's reliable, and from watching his film, he has great knowledge and feel for the game. Great versatility. He played both right and left tackle last year. And the thing that struck me about him...
guard too, no?
Well, the thing that struck me about him was I was talking to somebody I know who, has some people at Alabama, and, Steve knows who we're talking about because he's been on the show before, but he said that the Alabama coaches last year actually wanted to play him at center, but couldn't find somebody to replace him at tackle, so they left him at tackle. So the thing about Jonah Williams is you've got a guy that can play center, guard, either tackle position. I think he is slightly raw, but I think in the end, it's possible 3 years from now we look at this, and he was the best offensive tackle in this draft, where I think Kobe Ford is a guy that whether he plays guard or tackle, he's a plug-and-play offensive lineman immediately.
Any chance we see the Giants go after one of these tackles with their first pick?
I can tell you this. If I'm the New York Giants, what I do is I take Jawan Taylor and I put him at right tackle. With the 17th pick in the draft, I take the best defensive player available, and in the second round, I take a shot with Ryan Finley. If it doesn't work out next year, I go draft a quarterback in the first round, and I bring him in with an offensive line that now has Will Hernandez and Juwan Taylor on the right side, and he's actually coming into a situation that is going to be much more conducive to, playing injury-free. So I think if I'm the New York Giants, that's what I do here. I would take what I think is the best offensive tackle. And when I look at Ford, I'm not sure if he's a guard or a tackle. I think he can play either one. Juwan Taylor is a guy who I think is a little raw, but he's a steady pass blocker. He is better at this moment as a run blocker, but I would go Juwan Taylor here. I just think that the offensive line is undervalued big time in these drafts. The other thing is this. You could go a different direction with them at 6 and maybe pick what you think's the best edge pass rusher or the best linebacker, and then come back at 17 and possibly get a Jonah Williams or an Andre Dillard, which I don't think's a bad idea either.
Any chance the Giants possibly go after a receiver that early?
I don't know why they would. They've got Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and Saquon Barkley.
And not to mention, they also have Corey Coleman, who he seems like a bust right now, but he was working with Eli Manning. I saw tape on them working together this offseason, so he could still develop. He was a former first-round talent.
Yeah, and let's face it, you don't win Super Bowls with wide receivers. You win it with linemen. And the problem with them is they missed big time on Eric Flowers a few years ago, and it set that offensive line back big time. And they can't miss with this pick. And I think if you were to take a Ford or a Jonah Williams, even though I have Taylor ranked higher. Yeah.
Jonah Williams, if you can't miss, that might be the way to go. Because he seems like the safest pick.
He is. To me, I think him and Ford are the safest picks. And I think Ford is most ready to play right now. And if you're going to draft him at 6, you almost have to take the guy who's most capable of playing right now, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does.
So, Steve, any take on the offensive tackles?
Not already been said. I think, it's an important position that needs to be looked at. I mean, I think there's going to be some glamour players taken where I think they need to be working on the offensive lines. Most teams do. I like the fact when you talk about the Giants, how many times was Eli Manning rushed and sacked? And he's got good popular talent in his receivers and running backs. But I agree with you. If I was New York Giants, I'd be looking to take some offensive linemen and try and protect Manning as much as I could.
All right, let's move on, and let's talk about the interior offensive line, which is guys that we think are going to be guards or centers. Anybody stand out here to you?
I mean, Anthony? is it Garrett Bradbury? Is he clear-cut the number one interior offensive lineman on the board?
I'll tell you, I've been looking at this, and there's a lot of places where Garrett Bradbury is not even ranked as a top 5 or 10 guard.
That's surprising because I see him going into first in a lot of mocks.
Yeah,
late first round.
He was a guy, to me, that looked really good, Steve.
Isn't he, in the take on him, he's kind of small and a little bit underpowered for the massive those tackles he's going to face. I mean,
Well,
I think he's considered small size and a bit underpowered.
Yeah, I don't know, because I looked at, Walters today on the guards and the centers, the interior linemen, just for the hell of it and preparedness. I don't even think he had Bradbury in the top 10, which shocked me, because Bradbury looked really good in, what was that, Senior Bowl or whatever bowl game he played in? Anthony?
No, no, he's not ranked in their top 10.
No.
I'm looking at it right now.
So when you look at him, give me this. What's his arm size, length of his arms? If you can find him. Because I think that's the worry with him. I mean,
his arm size?
Yeah, the length of his arms. I could give you this. You remember Dave Remington? The Cincinnati Bengals drafted him in the first round out of Nebraska.
31 and 3/4, by the way.
31 and 3/4. But
Yes.
I think Dave Remington was drafted by the Bengals to be the center. He ended up being a huge bust because he didn't have the length in the arms. I think center guard, I think Chris Lindstrom is the smartest of all of these linemen, no matter what position they are. I think he could start right out of the gate, and he has great hands, outstanding leverage. I think Chris Lindstrom is the best. I think Eric McCoy is the second best. And the thing about Eric McCoy is the Bengals drafted Billy Price last year, and Eric McCoy already, I think, is going to be a better player than what Billy Price was. And then, of course, you go down a little farther, you find Michael Jordan's going to be in the NFL draft this year, Steve. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he's a 6'5" guard, but now he's up to 300 pounds. So, I don't know. I'm not overwhelmed with anything on the interior line here. To me, you got Lindstrom, McCoy. You have, and it looks like people other than just me have major questions about Garrett Bradbury, too.
Yeah, he looks like I said, I'm looking at 4 mock drafts right now. He's a first-round pick in all 4 of them late, to the Chiefs at 29 or the Rams.
Yeah, I think Bradbury is a decent player. I don't think he's worth a first-round draft pick. But the only interior lineman I see is if a team needs a center, I think Eric McCoy is worth it. And if a team needs a guard, I think at the end of the first round, I think Chris Lindstrom's worth it. There's no Quentin Nelson in this draft. And guard-wise, I think about the only guard coming into the draft that was ever like Quentin Nelson was John Hanna. Which 10 years from now is going to be one of the questions on our show. Is Quentin Nelson better than John Hanna?
Where do you rank Larry Allen? Because you bring up Anthony Munoz and John Hanna as comparisons.
Well,
to
Larry Allen was a tackle.
Great.
Yeah, but he was nothing like John Hanna or Anthony Munoz.
Didn't he play guard too?
I think he did at some point. But yeah, I mean, Larry Allen to me is probably the third guy I would bring up. It's just Anthony Munoz and John Hanna were technically about as superior as it gets as offensive linemen. Larry Allen technically was really good, but a lot of his, until later in his career, was just he was so much damn stronger than everybody else.
Yeah. He had a 700-pound bench press, 900-pound bench press.
That's what I mean. He was stronger than everybody else. So when you look at it, I think Munoz and Hanna, I'm talking about coming out of college, are 2 guys that you knew were going to be great players. Larry Allen, I think there was more question, and I think Larry Allen, during his career, developed into one of the great tackles of all time. So when I bring up Hanna and Munoz, it's in the context of coming out of the draft. Those were the 2 best guys I ever saw. It's like if I talk about quarterbacks coming out in the draft, I mean, to me, honestly, I hate to say this because Steve's on here, but the 2 best quarterbacks that were can't miss to me coming out of the draft that I ever saw were John Elway and Andrew Luck. Because they were big physical guys who could run but could also throw the ball and had great field vision. And a guy like Tom Brady developed into that stuff, but he still didn't have the physical stuff. But mentally, he was beyond most anybody that ever played. But the problem is, you're kind of guessing on the mental makeup when they're coming out of the draft, because mentally you can be strong as hell in the college level, but you get to the NFL, things are different with grown men. Maybe you're not as mentally strong. So yeah, Larry Allen to me is one of the 5 greatest offensive linemen that ever lived. That fair enough?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you got centers. You know, guys like Dwight Stevenson, that I think is underranked. But I would really throw Dwight Stevenson in with those 3, and I think those are the 4 best offensive linemen I've ever seen. And if I had to throw a 5th, I may throw Tony Baselli in there, who belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but, from old Jacksonville, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if he doesn't get hurt and he plays another 4 or 5 years, he would have been first ballot Hall of Fame without a problem.
Is Joe Thomas a Hall of Famer?
To me, the Hall of Fame is different than what it is to most people. To me, the Hall of Fame is guys that are the greatest to ever play their position. So, no, Joe Thomas was a great player. But Joe Thomas doesn't belong in a Hall of Fame with Larry Allen and Anthony Munoz as tackles. Neither does Andrew Whitworth. So, I think the Hall of Fame should just be for the greatest players to ever play their positions. And I think it gets dumbed down when you bring guys like Joe Thomas who were just really, really good. I mean, maybe it should be the Hall of really, really good, and then we can let everybody in and everybody will be happy. And I think Steve agrees with me on this too, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, because we see this in all Hall of Fames where guys get in that aren't legends. I mean, to be in the Hall of Fame, you should be a legend. I mean, and you got guys like Joe Klecko. Joe Klecko's not in the Hall of Fame. Joe Klecko is one of the greatest defensive linemen to ever played a game. This is a man that made All-Pro at all 3 defensive line positions, but yet he can't get elected into the Hall of Fame. I mean,
how was he towards the media? Because that seems to play a bigger role than it should.
This is my point, though. That is the point. It's more of a popularity contest than anything else. I mean, Robert Brazil, who we've had on the show before, you said it yourself. You weren't even sure who he was when we first told you about him, were you?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and Robert Brazil is a guy that the first 7 years he was the NFL was all pro. We're not talking about 7 times in a row he made the Pro Bowl. He was all pro, which made him one of the 2 best outside linebackers in the NFL every year his first 7 years. And when they named the All-Decade team, he was the outside linebacker on the All-Decade team for the 70s, and it took him 30 years to get in the NFL. Now, how could a guy be on an All-Decade team, which makes him one of the 2 best outside linebackers for an entire decade in the NFL, but it takes him 30 years to get into the Hall of Fame?
I think all Hall of Fames are skewed.
Yeah. I mean, because there's not a guy that makes an all-decade team for an entire 10 years. Another one, Eddie Metter, who most people don't remember, 1960s, he was named one of the top 2 corners of the entire decade. And nobody even brings him up to get into the Hall of Fame. Hell, he still holds 6 Rams records that he's held for almost 50 years now. But he was a quiet guy like Robert Brazil, didn't go around screaming, "Look at me." And, Robert Brazil was a guy that played in Houston. And no doubt, if the Oilers would have won one of those championship games against the Steelers and won a Super Bowl, Robert would have got it in right away. So when you look at the Hall of Fame, there's so many variables that get you in, and there's so many variables that really shouldn't even matter. I'll bet you almost anything right now, if you had a fan vote, who should get in the Hall of Fame, Joe Klecko or Mark Gastineau? Mark Gastineau would win.
Just because, why? He was a personality, bigger personality?
Yeah. I mean, Mark Gastineau, you're not old enough to remember probably, but Steve is. Mark Gastineau in the early 80s was all over everything.
Yep.
And he wasn't half the player of Joe Klecko, but he was the guy that did the sack dance, pounded his chest and said, "Looked at me," while Joe Klecko's the one doing all the hard work and making all the plays to make Gastineau look good. I mean, in the end, the reason Gastineau was so good is because most teams, they'd put Gastineau on the same side as Klecko. So with Klecko, if he's playing defensive tackle, the guard and the tackle are both blocking him. Mark Gastineau gets to run free against the tackle. So most of his sacks were because Joe Klecko was the guy playing inside of him. Or they'd put him on the other side, and Marty Lyons, who was an absolutely great player, did the same thing. The double team would go to the defensive tackle, and they would try to block Gastineau with one guy. And eventually they started chipping with the running back, but I don't know about you. I'd rather be doubled by, a a tackle and a running back than I would an end and a running back than I would by a guard and a tackle. But that's either here or there. All right, guys, we got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think we got it all, and we're going to come back and do defensive players tomorrow.
Defensive players tomorrow. So, Steve, study up. I got to, too, because I've concentrated on offense the last 3 days to write all those articles, which I just realized I, had some errors and put wrong guys at wrong spots. But that's all right. Everybody read it anyways at thegrillingtruth.com. Steve, any final comments before we go?
No, not at all.
Anthony?
No, I think we got it all covered now.
All right, guys. We will be back at noon tomorrow. Remember, in 33 minutes, I will be back with the Sheridan Report, Bobby Sheridan. Also, tomorrow night, Joe Kelly and myself will be doing a Cincinnati Bengals weekly show where we preview the Bengals draft. And, of course, don't forget, Thursday night, brought to you by the Love Harder Project, Tim Flannery, former San Diego Padre. We will have the live NFL draft show with myself, Steve, Anthony Cervino, Matt Andruscavage, and Matt Minnick, and many special surprise guests. Former NFL players will be joining us during the night off and on, so make sure you check that out. Guys, you can find us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Spotify, Zeno Live Radio, YouTube, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Anthony Cervino, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.